No, dang, why did it not show that chat as it was showing up here? Hang on, let me take a quick look at OBS here. Just like, it would be nice if it would stop refreshing every time I switch over. Oh, there we go. That's the button I want to click there. And now to just make sure that that translates. Oh. Jumping forward here, accidentally showing off a bit of a scene that I built up for when we're actually going to be jumping into some books. Hang on one quick second as I try and get this chat all good, because I am specifically not using references. I am kind of just running each one independently, which has its perks, it has its pros, has its cons, it has its downsides, but nonetheless, let's just display chat, facing forward. Alright, that should be everything there. Sorry, I thought I had that all, fixed up and, everything was good. But, alas, there's always some sort of bug. Okay. So, it's been a bit of a minute since we've been streaming last. Mostly because work's been busy. Not bad, just... It's honestly been pretty good. It's just, been busy. And so in that time, I've been going through my notes here. Been postulating on the planes and the realms and all of that sort of fun stuff. I've also got some of these references and information here from previous write-ups and previous works and such, and previous attempts to catalog and write down the actual lore of my setting and how its multiverse and planes go. So, if you had tuned into a previous stream, I was kind of rambling about some of this stuff, which is fair. But a lot of that came in talking about just kind of how each world interacts a little bit, how different conjunction events happen. It's just and the short answer to that is 2 worlds touch. The planes come a little bit too close, and so they touch, they interact. Gateways open up. The fabric between the known realities is a little bit more wibbly wobbly, and people can cross in and out, pass through, all around, that sort of fun stuff. So yeah, that is the short of planar travel. The longer aspect of that is referencing things called analog worlds and bridge manifolds. Fundamentally, a manifold is just a plane, a universe, and then sometimes they will fork off of it, like so. Like, these 2 planes are touching. Perhaps this one came from here originally, but it has forked off. It is its own separate thing that is just connected to it. Hopefully that showed up well there. So, this is one of the sections that actually needs a decent amount of writing for the core rulebook, and I'd ideally like there to be like a 2-page spread, so you can just open up and be like, here's a primer on the Feywild, or the planet of Deavos, since those 2 things are synonymous in my setting. Here's a little primer on Oridon, the home planet of the dwarves. Here's a bit on Oris, or Terraneus, or Ionok, or some of these other worlds that are archetypal in fantasy. So today, I was primarily wanting to take a quick look at specifically Terraneus and Ionok, just because these are the two elemental planes that I have developed the least throughout my campaign settings, throughout my my running of D&D and running of my own homebrew world in that, and also because when we were working on our backgrounds, if I can pull that up here, one of the things that I wanted to do was I wanted to add in a couple of different cultures from across the default campaign setting into the core rulebook here. And so that would include cultures of Terraneus, cultures of Ionok, and then I also have cultures of the Underkeep, which is going to be our Underdark. But once again, as you can see here, we have cultures of Deavos. We know what the Feywild is like in this setting. We have cultures of Oris. We know what the elemental plane of air is like here. We know what the elemental plane of fire is like here. It is functionally my analog of the Hells. And we know about, the Sea of Stars, the actual name of the campaign setting. But Earth and Water have been a little bit of a mystery here. Give me one quick second. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of adjust temperatures here because it's feeling a little bit cold. All right, there we go. Sorry about that. I just wanted to adjust the thermostat. It was getting a bit cold here at my desk, and so I wanted to be comfortable for the stream. All right, so that is kind of where we're standing here. We want to build out some of these different cultures. We want to build out some of these different worlds, campaign setting areas, etc. So, and what we're also going to be working on is creating a template so that we can just immediately apply them to all of these different lands. So, let us begin. So, what are our core pieces of information about this world? Hang on, let me Okay, so we want to here. All right. So, when I'm thinking about world building, my first thing goes to an acronym for this, and that's more for city focused, but it's a good place to start. So that's going to be society. We want to talk about politics, religion. Oh, sorry. Forgot that one of them. Society, politics, economics, religion, military. Now, so I'm sure you can see how that spells and how that mnemonic works there. Now, I also enjoy including into here, probably usually as a bit more of a subset of society, the arts. So this is great for building out cities and such like that. But there is more to it than I mean, an entire planet is not just one city. An entire planet is not just one region. It is a living environment that is shaped and inhabited by people and culture, people of all stripes and people of all cultures, and different creatures of every variety. And so, what we want to do here is we want to address that. So let's first go ahead and plug in an option for regions. So just some different regions and their regions and environments. There we go. That's much better. Actually, I've kind of already done a little bit of this. Let me go ahead and pull over my character sheet for my friend Jacob's Strixhaven game. And so we're going to steal a little bit of formatting and such from there. All right. So we go to Home Kingdom here. There we go. This is not a fully fleshed out thing. Jacob and I were kind of working on this in the background as just sort of a fun little side project. More than anything because we don't really see that we're going to be going outside of Strixhaven that much. So this was just a lot of fun world building. So heading 3 here. Heading 4, so we're going to do region 1. Then okay, region 1. Introduction. Sorry, why am I blanking here? Okay, heading 4. So we're going to go to heading 5 here. Notable locations. Control 5 here. Primary cultures. Descriptions, notable locations, descriptions. Yeah, okay. And then honestly, we could probably throw in a section there for plot hooks, but theoretically, we want this to be expandable for different regions. So we have regions and environments. Actually, hang on. Okay. All right, so things to do and plot hooks there. I think that's a good one to round out a region there for actionable content, things that affect commoners' lives. Now this might be axable in less niche scenario. So there we go. All right, so that's our regions tree there. Let's see here. Regions and environments. So that's going to be different regions. So then outside of regions, we're going to have environments. Or introduction. Notable. Nope, this is going to be 5. Notable features. Descriptions. What else do we need to talk about with environments here? There's a part of me that wants to put down something for typical weather patterns, etc. Myths and myths about the area. There we go. All right, so there we go. We have some different things here where we can work with different environments, where we can work with different regions. All right, so that's going to cover most of that. So within each of these primary cultures, descriptions, society, art, religion, politics, economics, religion, and military. We can get rid of the type up there. And so other things that we want to include in the region environments, or at least within each of the worlds here, is mythologic background, if applicable. Story about the origin of the world. about the origin of the world. Held amongst its people. Alright, so mythologic background, regions and environments. I know there's one more thing I want to have in here. Actually, two things. I'm just kind of saving it for the end, towards the end here. So what we also want to do here on subheader 3 is conflicts. Major conflicts in the world at the present moment. Which groups are infighting? So not necessarily infighting. Which groups are fighting? You know, it's conflict. We get it. I don't need to put in sample text for it. This is just for me. And finally, the last thing that I do want to throw up on here is... And let me scroll down so it's fully in view here. Dragons. Not necessarily dragons, but like... in this world. Alright. Yeah, so dragons. What are the large supernatural forces that change and impact day-to-day life in this world? So if we're looking at a planet like Arrakis in the Dune universe, well, they don't have dragons, they have sandworms. And sandworms affect the culture on a massive scale with the Fremen. And so that's what I'm talking about here. What is like some sort of cool creature? What is something that can be that we can ride on here that is going to, you know, impact the way the game is played? Something that can either instill a sense of absolute terror in a player, but also a sense of awe and wonder. And I think D&D has a couple of things like that, but it's kind of it's a bit questionable. But like our planet does not actually have this definitionally, but like that's part of why this is fantasy. I'm talking about dragons. I'm talking like, is there a Tarask here? What's the people's reaction to that? Is it awake? Is it rampaging? Is it moving around? Is this a planet of titans and monsters? Is this the Godzilla universe? Godzilla would be a dragon here. Like, and so we're going to get to some of that stuff as we go through talking about different planes and different things that we like, as we read through different known elements of the worlds of D&D. We're going to talk about dragons and like what we can do to make these worlds special. Like what creatures are in control of these different worlds. What creatures who if they awake would unmake all of this world's reality. Like Cthulhu, that's a dragon. Alright, so yeah, that's, I think, a pretty decent place to start here. So let's roll back here and get away from my character sheet there. I'm gonna just switch these around here, because I know it's better to watch things being made on the left side of the screen here, given my face is not part of it. Alright, so if I open up where I wrote my template here on the Deavos tab, then I open up Ionok, or Terraneus on my interstitial drafting area, we can start kind of working things through here. Alright, so title. Ionok. Elemental realm. Hang on. The realm of elemental water. The elemental realm of water. No, because that would imply the realm is elemental. It's nature. Primordial water. Yeah, let's get away from using the word elemental. I feel like that's a bit scientific here. Ionok, the realm of primordial water. Okay, so that's going to be our common name of the world here. So this is going to be our whatchamacallit, our plane of elemental water. But, you know, once again, we're trying to be a little bit more science forward in our way of approaching world building here. So the idea of it being just a plane, a flat analog of reality that drifts and folds with the fabric of reality, it's cool. It's very fantasy. I personally don't find it as interesting or actionable because I find planar mechanics to be a little bit at odds with the slightly more down-to-earth cosmology that I like to explore in settings like this, and in D&D and in tabletop games. And so, but at the same time, you can't, you can, hang on. Let me slow down. My brain is working faster than my mouth is. I prefer to use words like realm here rather than planet, because, well, technically, yes, Ionok is just its own planet on a separate plane of existence. Its planet feels much more sci-fi, as in you're jumping in your starship, jumping to another planet. And that is fundamentally what is happening here. But, like, the game is fantasy, and so we want to couch things in fantastical language. We want to couch things in fantastical themes. So it's a realm. It's a world. It's a world beyond our own. It's a wet one. So I actually brought some of my classic D&D books out here. So I've got like the OG Manual of the Planes here. From AD&D. I've got a 3rd edition one, a 4th edition one. I've even got some classic Planescape here. So I've got a Planeswalker's Handbook from AD&D, and I've got... It's been a while since I've opened this up, so it's almost... So given my short-term memory, it's, you know, almost going to be like a new thing, but I've got the classic Planescape box set here. So I was thinking it was going to be fun to pull this stuff open, read forth from it, and just kind of, I don't know, take notes and just have ideas and chat about them. See what we like, see what we don't, because we're not bound by, you know, Dungeons and Dragons. We're creating our own game, we're creating our own world, but it's helpful to look at what has come before, what exists in this space, and see what we can do differently, what we can do better. You know, take what you like, twist it a little bit, change it into something you really like, and then that can be your own thing. So let me go ahead and jump to my new... that's one of the reasons that my stream was running a bit behind today. I was creating a new scene for OBS that was primarily focused on the camera, so that I can blow it up when I pull over a book and we can just read, and then it's just gonna be chat and everything like that. All right, so boom, there we go. And actually, I think let's see here. Once again, since this is still a bit of a test, I'm still figuring out what works good as far as streaming and everything. I am playing with it. Does this look better where we can see a little bit of the document behind us? I'm not sure. Yep. I'm gonna leave it like that for right now, so that way we can just kind of be making notes and you can kind of see that. But it's gonna prioritize the text of, you know, comments and such should they come in. And once again, I hope you do. I hope you're here, hoping and having a good time, having a great day. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump into the AD&D Manual of the Planes to talk about the Plane of Elemental Water. All right, Plane of Elemental Water, page number 46. All right, so the Plane of Elemental Water, this here is kind of what I'm looking at. I'll flip that around to show the art as we go around here. But without further ado, let me see if I can be... I want to try and keep the book a little bit in frame here, but at the same time, I still want to be, you know, present. All right, so the Plane of Elemental Water. The Plane of Elemental Water is an ocean without a surface, a vast expanse that extends in all directions without reaching air above or solid bottom below. The pressure of the water is uniform in all directions and equivalent to that of several feet beneath the surface of a prime planar ocean. The entire region is illuminated by soft light, glowing blues and greens that seem to radiate from the water itself. Elemental water is less harsh than the planes of fire and earth, though not as accessible as the plane of air. The plane of water is the home of elemental creatures such as the water weird, the Nereid, the Triton, and the realm of the Merid. While not a popular location for deities, the plane of water is the base for such as Tefnut of the Egyptians, Ato of the Finns, and Blibdulpub of the Kuatoans. The traveler entering the plane of water feels surrounded by the softly resilient element. Sights are muffled by the surrounding liquid, though sounds carry greater distances. Bubbles of air, floating chunks of rock, and even an occasional freestanding ball of fire survive in this cool plane. Unless the traveler has some method of breathing in this plane, however, these sensations may be the traveler's last. At its heart, the plane of water is clear water, brilliantly green and fresh. As the traveler moves away from that center, the nature of the plane changes. Toward the plane of Earth, the amount of debris and seaborne muck increases until movement is hampered by wading through the muck, and the plane of para-elemental ooze is reached. In another direction, towards the plane of air, the water grows chillier and fragments of ice appear and grow, until the entire horizon is filled with the wintry, white, solid mass of the plane of para-elemental ice. Toward the positive material plane, the water becomes warmer and more agitated, until the cohesiveness between water molecules breaks down and the plane of quasi-elemental steam is reached. Finally, as the traveler moves toward the negative material plane, the water begins to evaporate, leaving a saltier and saltier mixture, until the traveler finds himself in the plane of quasi-elemental salt. Traveling through the plane of water is best done with an elemental guide of water, or one of its associated para or quasi-planes. The traveler seeking to find his way without a guide courts disaster among the changing currents and murky depths of the plane of water. Alright. So, survival in the plane of water. Breathing. The greatest hazard of this plane presents to the prime planar travel is drowning in the elemental liquid. An unprotected character can hold his breath for 1/3 his constitution score, rounded up in rounds, with the following modifications. The time is halved if the character is performing strenuous activities or is heavily encumbered. The time is halved if the character did not get a full breath. Excuse me. For every round beyond the limit for holding breath, the character must roll a Constitution check each round, with penalty that increases by -2 for each round after the first. Failure in any check results in death by drowning. Fortunately, there are a number of items and spells that can help the traveler to survive this plane, including potions of water breathing and spells such as airy water and water breathing. The most useful item of a permanent nature for the traveler in this plane is the Ring of Water Breathing, or a similar device that does not have a time limit to it. Failing this, the ability to polymorph or shape change into a fish or other water-breathing or non-breathing creature is of great aid. Vision and senses. The clearest of water reduces sighting distances to 60 feet maximum. Further, the varying temperature of the water inhibits the use of infravision, so that it is no more useful than normal vision in this plane. Movement in the plane of water. Movement in the plane of water is similar to that in the other elemental planes. The traveler can move normally, walking, flying, etc., at his usual rate of speed. The character can also choose a down direction and sink, really, in that direction. Sinking is a pretty safe mode of locomotion, as the maximum rate is 200 feet per round. Damage for hitting a solid object while sinking is 1d6 for every 10 feet traveled, to a maximum of 6d6. Just as it is possible to sink downward, it is also possible to rise by touching an object that is significantly lighter than water, a chunk of elemental ice, or a waxed canvas sack filled with air. Rising objects move at a maximum rate of 400 feet per round. Recall that without sentience in the area, chunks of ice simply hang motionless in the elemental ocean. Once an intelligent or magical aura is near it, and that aura determines a downward direction, the ice rises in the opposite direction. Finally, those individuals with swimming movement move twice their normal rate in the plane of elemental water. Alright. Encounters in the plane of water. Travelers in the plane of elemental water have 1 in 10 chance of an encounter every 4 hours. The type of encounter is determined from the following table: 1 to 10, elemental phenomena; 11 through 25, elemental pocket; 26 through 100, a creature encounter. For elemental phenomena, determine the type of elemental phenomena from the following table: a d12 roll with given effects. Result of 1 to 3, a steam current; 4 to 5, a whirlpool; 6 to 8, an ice flow; 9 is a tidal bore; 10 is a silt flow; 11 is an airy water pocket; and 12 is a vortex to a prime material plane. Steam current. This is a wave of hot, bubbling water coming off the border with this plane of steam. It is undetectable and invisible until it is oh my gosh, I can't read straight. This is a wave of hot, bubbling water coming off the borders with the plane of steam. It is undetectable and invisible until it is on top of the travelers. The heat of a steam current varies in direction from 1 to 8-sided dice. From 1 to 8 6-sided dice, 1d8 of d6s. Any individuals with protection from fire or heat are safe from the effects of the steam. Whirlpool. Easily recognized and best avoided. A whirlpool is a freestanding disk of spinning water that often leads to another part of the plane. Those entering a whirlpool must begin their journeys anew, but if they employ an elemental guide, the time is halved. Unfortunately, a good deal of debris from other planes gathers in a whirlpool, So each creature must roll a successful dexterity check or suffer 1d10 points of damage from being jostled about. Ice Flow. An ice flow is easily spotted and becomes more common as the traveler approaches the plane of ice. Treat steam current encounters as ice flows if the plane of ice is the destination, and the travelers are at least halfway to their goal. An ice flow chills the water so that unprotected individuals suffer 1d4 points of damage per round. An ice flow can be used as a fast means of transportation in the plane of water. Tidal Bore. Like a steam current, this is an area of fast-moving water that is invisible and impossible to avoid. A bore lasts for 2d10 turns. Those caught in a bore must succeed on a successful dexterity check or suffer 1d10 points of damage. Worse still, a tidal bore encounter can cause an elemental guide of average intelligence or less to become separated and wander off. In any event, the travelers must begin their journey again. Make another encounter roll when the storm diminishes. Silt Flow. This is an easily noticed muddy current of water, either brine from the borders of the plane of salt, mud from the edges of the plane of ooze, or merely elemental dirt and earth that has long since eroded off a long-gone island. The flow moves slowly and is easily avoided, but it sometimes, 40%, masks the presence of a water elemental. Within the flow, sight is reduced to 20 feet. Airy Water Pocket. This rare phenomenon is greatly appreciated by travelers facing death by drought. It is a naturally occurring sphere of water that has the effects of an airy water spell within its confines. Unlike the spell, however, those within have no control over the movement of the globe. And finally, Vortex to a prime material. This resembles a whirlpool, as it is a flattened disk of moving water. At the center of this disk is a darkened sphere, the vortex itself, that leads to a prime material plane. The vortex usually emerges as a freestanding maelstrom in the ocean, in a lake deep beneath the earth, or along the deepest trenches of the sea bottom. While a heavily armored traveler suffers no movement penalties in the plane of water, normal restrictions apply in prime material. The DM must also determine whether the vortex leads to the traveler's prime material plane or an alternate prime material plane. Okay. I'm just kind of looking through here at the different elemental pockets and such on the next few pages here. Given that these are all kind of as I was reading beforehand, it's more of a list of different encounters that you can have, and that is a very good and useful thing, but right now I'm looking primarily for lore. I'm looking for things that are actionable, things that can be translated one-to-one. And something that would feel natural in a 2-page spread. So specifically encounters here are kind of at a bit of a minimum. However, let's go ahead and work through what we do have from this. Give me one quick second, check over with chat and Twitch here, make sure everything is going good. Alright, looks like everything is coming along well. Fantastic. Okay. So, first things that we can... Actually, hang on. I did promise that I would show the image. So here is kind of the keystone art for the plane of elemental earth here. We've got some... it looks like merfolk, and they're kind of taming and working with some of the different animals and creatures in the area. Alright, so... Introduction. So we want to have I mean, once again, this is going to be kind of a very basic description of what we're going to be doing here. We have description of the world, where the world is in relation to other known worlds. What an adventure shunted to this world would experience immediately. All right, so let's go ahead, since now we've got that, a little bit of our introduction kind of drafted up here. Let's go ahead and look towards some of the stuff later on in here on perhaps combat, magic, and features of the Plane of Water. Once again, this is going back to AD&D. I've got books here for 3rd edition. I've got a 4th edition book, and then I've got some old school Planescape here that I'm just going to be reading through here as we just kind of build up our idea of the Plane of Elemental Water. And then, depending on the time when we finish that up, as well as some of the notes that I've taken and world builded out at work, kind of over in this journal here, we might go into some of the Plane of Elemental Earth as well. Okay, so combat in the Plane of Water. Limitations for combat in the Plane of Elemental Water are the same as for all inner planes, with the additional limitations placed on underwater combat in the DMG, page 56. Nets entangle but do not drag opponents to the sea floor, as there is no bottom in the endless sea of elemental water. The specially required crossbows function only if they fire magical bolts, otherwise the bolt hangs motionless once it leaves the bow. Alright, magic in the Plane of Water. New subheading there. Magic functions in the Plane of Water under the limitations for all inner planes. Spells are affected in the Plane of Water as they are in the seas of the Prime Material Plane, see pages 57 of the DMG and 81 of Unearthed Arcana, so that a fireball is useless due to the nature of water, rather than the effects of the plane. A fireball works normally in a pocket of air in the Plane of Water. A contact other plane spell directed into the Plane of Water appears as a large silvery ball, about the size of a ripe cabbage. Each ball contains a question or series of questions from the plane. The effects of touching and breaking such a ball are the same in the Plane of Elemental Air. Summoning and conjuration spells appear as shiny spheres, similar in size to elemental pockets, but these radiate golden, greenish, or bluish auras. Elemental creatures are affected as by a charm spell and attracted to the spheres. Marids, as noted, are generally immune to this type of request, though on occasion one pops through looking for deeds of glory. Should an elemental traveler step through a border, he finds himself on a prime material plane, not necessarily his own. He is treated as a summoned creature for the purposes and duration of the spell, his actions, and effects of other magic upon him. Alright. Is there, what can we do here? Actually, I do realize that in our drafting here, we forgot to mention, like, we mentioned, like, dragons, we mentioned big creatures. However, we did not mention just kind of your standard flora and fauna, so I'm going to go ahead and add that over to our template here. So we have our regions and environments, primary cultures, notable locations, things to do, and plot hooks. So if we go to our environments here, notable features, myths about the area. Notable features, common flora and fauna. Brief description. There we go. So that's something we want to make sure that we add into here. So if I go over here, back to our manual of the planes, Let me go ahead and jump back to my expanded view camera here. Features of the plane of water. Elementals. Creatures of the plane of water seem to be made up of currents of watery foes, making them hard to detect in their native element, and obvious in shape only, when they are placed in a pocket of air or similar medium that confines them to a specific shape. In addition, the appearance of a type of elemental creature, such as the elemental elephant in the preceding table, that being the water encounter chart here, showed. Can vary from one encounter to the next, though it has the same statistics. For help in determining random looks for elemental creatures as opposed to, you see a watery elephant. The DM is directed to page 120, Appendix 2. Most elemental creatures of water prefer the deep areas of the plane that are unsilted by debris and far from vortices. Elemental creatures are easily drawn into such vortices and cannot easily escape, so they avoid these traps if at all possible. One group of water elementals, the Tritons, have made excellent progress in settling large areas of the prime plane oceans. Water elementals are by temperament an easygoing, apathetic lot, tending to take the easiest course, much like water flowing downhill. Those of low or higher intelligence can serve as elemental guides, though the traveler should show strength and determination in getting the guide forward, otherwise the elemental stops to examine every new current on the way to the final destination. Water elementals have a highly developed sense of taste, which is how they find themselves in the limitless sea, and serve well for a rare potion. In particular, sweet water is a favorite or exotic fluid. So actually, that is one thing that I specifically want to... I think I'm going to copy that text directly from the book here. But just as a thing that we want to make note of, I really like the idea of most elemental creatures preferring deep areas of the plane. Most elemental creatures of water prefer the deep areas of the plane that are unsilted by debris and far from vortices. Elemental creatures are easily drawn into such vortices. And cannot easily escape. So they avoid these traps if at all possible. Alright, and so this is... and we're on page number 49. All right, so we're just going to kind of keep that as a note for probably some of our elements and our... Oh, so that was my phone. For our development of them and their cultures and their societies. Okay. All right, so our next section here is going to be on Archomentals. Archomentals. There are a number of powerful elementals who are given ranks such as barons, masters, and grandmasters, and those who study such things. In physical stats, most are similar to the Princess of Elemental Evil, Olhydra, described in the Fiend Folio Tome, though all Archomentals have their own desires and motivations. Olhydra makes her home in the ruins of a great undersea citadel of black coral that was once the capital of a world-spanning empire, long ago destroyed by Olhydra. This may be exaggeration laid upon by the passage of years, but the fact remains that the lair of Olhydra is richly lardered. Would-be robbers are warned that a dozen water elementals of maximum hit points and magical abilities serve as her bodyguard in court. Like all Archomentals, Olhydra has the powers afforded has the powers afforded a demi power. I'm not 100% sure how that translates directly, but gotcha. Okay, so this is probably a portmanteau of archons and elementals, so that would be where we get the phrase archomentals. So arch elementals. I mean, I do like elements of this. Go to what's her name? Olhydra. In feed. Functionally just powerful elementals. Hydra makes her home in the ruins of a great undersea citadel. Of black coral that was once the capital of a world-spanning empire. Long ago destroyed. This might be exaggeration. Laid upon by the passage of years. Let's see here. So I do like the idea of arch elementals, and I'm torn on the phrase of archimentals. It feels it feels a bit forced, but at the same time, I don't dislike it. All right, so our next section here is on. It says, Istitia. The most powerful and pure of the water elementals has many names in many planes, yet they all sound like the slap of waves on the beach. Istitia is said to be as large as a small sea on the prime material plane, though to deal with supplicants he may form a smaller, more reasonable form. In that form he sometimes crosses through a vortex into the prime, where whenever floods plague a nation, Istitia is said to walk among them. Istitia has great and powerful mystic powers. In addition, those of a greater power. See Appendix 4, page 124. All spells involving the elements are known to Istitia, who may use them and their modified forms at will. Istitia sees himself and other elemental water as the great leveler and equalizer, the element that eventually overwhelms air, erodes stone, and extinguishes fire. The task is long, but Istitia has the patience of millennia behind it. Excuse me. The concerns of insignificant mortals are not his, and unless he is offered a great boon, his attentions are better spent observing the flow of the oceans and the rhythm of the tides. So I do like this idea that there is a character who is, personified of the plane of elemental water, where they are, where like they are the voice of the land. And I do have a thing of similar kind of nature with that, with the Fey-born ancestry of the Alder Elves. And so that is a way that a player can kind of take on a similar role here. Now, of course, this wouldn't be an arch elemental being who is the fundamental, I control the nature of this specific plane, but at the same time, I think that it is cool that that is an idea that they brought up here. I'm not going to make a necessary note of it here in my document, just because I think I don't want there to be one idea that is just, hey, this is the god of this plane. I want there to be several different powerful creatures. Maybe these are going to be arch elementals, or I personally prefer the term leviathans. Like, I like these large sea creatures that are existing within this world of infinite oceans that, kind of mess things up for people. But once again, let's continue reading through some of the plane of elemental water here. I'm going to grab a quick drink. Give me one quick second here. Alright. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Alright, so our final section here. Oh, hang on, let me. Is going to be on the merits. So let's go. I'm going to go ahead and read that for you guys here. But until then, here is the one bit of art on this set of pages here. It looks like a bit of a tide pool here with a bit of a flume coming out of it there. Alright. But nonetheless, we've got Marids to talk about. The Marids. The Marids are said to be born of the ocean, with currents as their muscles and pearls as their teeth. They are the handsomest and most powerful race of genie kind. They are also the most individual and chaotic of the elemental races, and only rarely deign to serve others. Many prime material regions consider Marids to be creatures of legend only. Marids live in a loose empire that is ruled by a Padisha, but each Marid lays some claim to royalty, and there have often been several true heirs to the Padisha's throne simultaneously through the eons. A Marid household numbers 2d10, and is located around loosely grouped elemental pockets containing the basic necessities for Marid life. Larger groups of Marids gather for hunts and jousts, during which individual effort is heavily emphasized. Marids tolerate their genie-kind relatives, putting up with the Jinni and Jinn like poor cousins, while evincing much hatred of the Ifrit and Dao. Their attitude toward the rest of the world is somewhat similar. Most creatures from other planes are lesser beings, not to be bothered with unless one lands in your feast hall at an inopportune time. Marids are champion tale tellers, though most of their tales emphasize their own prowess and belittle others. When communicating with a Marid, one must attempt to keep the conversation going without continual digression for one tale of might or another, while not offending the Marid. Marids consider it a capital offense for a lesser being to offend a Marid. Marids are not easily forced to perform actions even if convinced, usually through flattery and bribery to obey. They often stray off their intended courses to seek some other adventure that promises greater glory, or to instruct lesser creatures on the glories of Marid kind. Most mages skilled in summoning and conjuration consider Marids to be more trouble than they are worth, which accounts for the great lack of Marid-controlled items as opposed to those affecting Ifrit and Jinn. And that is the end of the plane of elemental earth in AD&D here. Now, granted, I did skip over a couple of these areas here, notably the elemental pockets and the creature encounters. But nonetheless, like, as far as lore goes, that is most of what we have from this edition of D&D. It's a plane of water. It's infinite in all sides. It borders the other elemental planes to create quasi and para-elemental planes. It's all about water. And we have a couple of, ideas about creatures from it, which is nice and is something that, we can and will learn from, build upon, and, tweak for our own use. But at the same time, there is also, in my opinion, not necessarily a lot that is. On one hand, I want to say actionable, but technically, all of it is actionable. It is all technically, this is what you do in this plane. These are the different encounters you roll for. But there's not necessarily a lot of, in my mind, plot hooks. There's not necessarily a lot of environments. We have the things about the Archimentals. We have the Bull Hydra, which is cool. That is a nice location. That is good world building there. But I think that we can do more. We can do, I don't want to say necessarily better, but I want to try and have more, hey, these are things that can happen to you here, which this book does great. but I want there to also be a sense of this is why someone is going here. Whereas the way that the AD&D Manual of the Planes kind of addresses how people end up here on different elemental planes is it almost seems like it's exclusively by accident, which, look, I'm not going to pretend that I am the biggest, most understood person about how AD&D plays, but it feels odd that these realms are known to exist, and they mostly exist just that you go there by accident. Or at least that's how it reads. So let me go ahead and pull open our next book here, our next kind of reference piece. That would be the 3rd edition Manual of the Planes. Here. Hang on, let me just make sure everything is still going great. Do a quick check on YouTube and Twitch here. See how things be working over there. Overall, seems fine. Chat seems to be functioning normally. Yep, cool. All right, so let's jump into 3rd edition here. Let's see here. The inner planes. There we go. The elemental plane of air, earth, fire, and water. Water being page number 77. Okay. Yep. So, ta-da! It is a 3rd edition book. It is nice and dense, full of text. Here, if there are images, I will show them, but based on my cursory glance here, you are out of luck. All right. Speaking of which, 3rd edition here. I love the 3rd edition kind of page borders here. It's enough that that's actually what I was doing when I created the borders that you see kind of right up in these areas here around the frame. I was trying to design what would look like 3rd edition page text, like page borders. And so it's just kind of become a part of my streaming setup, my video recording, and everything. Just so I do love opening up 3rd edition books and just be like, hey, I did something like that. And it's just a point of personal pride. I quite enjoy having made these little bits of framing and such that I get to use. All right. This does have more. Ooh. All right. So, the elemental plane. Hang on. You know what? Nah, that's fine. The elemental plane of water. Hang on. Let me see if there's a way for me to get the book a little bit in frame here. Not necessarily hiding behind it, but just showing it. Alright. The elemental plane of water. It is an ocean without a surface. It is a domain of current and wave. It is a bottomless depth. The elemental plane of water is a sea without a floor or a surface, an entirely fluid environment lit by a diffuse glow. It is one of the more hospitable of the inner planes once a traveler gets past the problem of breathing the local medium. The eternal oceans of this plane vary between ice cold and boiling hot, between saline and fresh. They are perpetually in motion, racked by currents and tides. The plane's permanent settlements form around bits of flotsam and jetsam suspended within this endless liquid. Even these settlements drift on the tides of the elemental plane of water. Elemental plane of water traits. The elemental plane of water has the following traits. Subjective directional gravity. The gravity here works similar to that of the elemental plane of air, but sinking or rising on the elemental plane of water is slower and less dangerous than on the elemental plane of air. Normal time, infinite size, alterable morphic, water dominant, enhanced magic. Spells and spell-like abilities that use or create water are both extended and enlarged, as if the extend spell and enlarge spell had been used on them, but the spells don't require higher level slots. A water-breathing spell would thus last 4 hours per level rather than 2 hours per level. Spells and spell-like abilities that are already extended or enlarged are unaffected by this benefit. Impeded magic. Spells and spell-like abilities with the fire descriptor are impeded. This includes spells of the fire domain. These spells and spell-like abilities... Hang on, I think I'm hearing a bit of feedback. Give me one quick second here. Oh. Sheesh. I'm getting desktop audio bleed. Why? Hang on, is that going to be better? Yes, much. Okay. Hang on. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I guess what I'm thinking is I didn't have one of my sources muted there, so it was coming through. That said, it shouldn't have. I have desktop audio turned off here. As far as transmitting to stream. So I can't tell you what's going on. Here, give me one quick second. I'm going to pull open the stream on my phone here externally, so that way I can diagnose if there's an issue there. Let's see here. It's the most understood person about spells and spell-like abilities that use or create water are both extended and enlarged, as if the extend spell and enlarge spell had been used on them. The spells don't require slots. A water-breathing spell would thus last unaffected by this benefit. Impede. These Okay, well, I mean, that's good. Is looking like it is just on. It was just something that was coming through my audio there, so not actually being transmitted to stream, which is the best case scenario. So, sorry about that pause there. That is bit egg on my face there. So let's go ahead and jump back into our read through on the Manual of the Plains here from 3rd edition, talking about water inhabitants. See what we like from that section there, and I can bring forward to our description of the realm of primordial water for our game here. Okay, so water inhabitants. The elemental plane of water is relatively benign for an inner plane, and is home to a large number of native elementals, water-breathing outsiders, and creatures from other planes that can survive uh, in its watery seas. Elementals are discrete and separate manifestations of the plane itself, granted sentience and mobility from magic or natural forces. These include the water elementals, summoned by spellcasters, and elemental versions of material plane creatures. Such creatures tend to be at least semi-liquid and mimic seagoing beasts and monsters of the material plane. Many water-breathing outsiders also make the elemental plane of water their home. These include such transient beasts as the Togenita and the Mephit, as well as more subtle groups such as Tritons and Merid Genies. In general, water-breathing outsiders found on the elemental plane of water tend to be playful and cruel, not hesitating to torment and drown interplanar visitors who rely on magic spells or items to survive on their plane. Finally, water-breathing creatures from other planes may be found on the elemental plane of water. Fish, crustaceans, cephalopods, and most sea dwellers live on this plane, but not air-breathing ocean dwellers such as whales and dolphins. The elemental plane of water is hospitable to both freshwater and saltwater species, though each type has its own regions to inhabit. Monstrous aquatic creatures such as the kraken and aboleth may be found here as well. Portals seem to be common between the elemental plane of water and oceans on the material plane. And rarer portals connect to large bodies of water on other planes. Both of the great rivers of the outer planes, the Styx and Oceanus, contain vortices to the elemental plane of water. Tritons and Merid in particular make use of the vortices, and settlements of these creatures are usually found near permanent portals. Natives of the elemental plane of water speak Aquan, a flowing, subtle language filled with double meanings and hidden puns. Those dealing with other planes may speak other languages to facilitate their dealings. Common, Infernal, Abyssal, and Celestial are frequent choices. Alright, movement and combat here. I actually do quite like this section on water inhabitants, just as far as things that we can borrow for the RPG here. I believe that would skew closer towards where we were discussing common flora and fauna, and then also primary cultures for different regions and environments. Okay. Movement and combat. The elemental plane of water has no set directions, so travelers can move about it in a fashion similar to movement on the elemental plane of air. Rather than falling, a traveler may choose to rise or sink, while a traveler may choose which way is up. Whether she rises or sinks depends on whether she would rise or sink normally. Characters carrying less than 5 pounds of gear rise head first, but others sink feet first. Both do so at the same rate. 15 feet the first round, then 30 feet each round thereafter. The resistance of the water prevents the great speeds found on the elemental plane of air and elsewhere, so a sinking or rising character takes no damage from striking an object. In addition to moving about by sinking or rising, travelers can swim normally. If a solid surface is available, they can walk. Those with fly speeds can fly at half their normal rate, and their maneuverability is reduced by 1 grade. There is almost no static physical locations on the elemental plane of water, because even the largest communities drift on the currents of the plane. These include portals that lead elsewhere, and established communities may drift along with these vortex entrances. Travel between 2 communities on the elemental plane of water often requires divination magic. Alternatively, travelers can hire a local guide, knowledgeable in the currents and tides of the plane to figure out where a particular community or portal has drifted to. Tritons and Marids make suitable guides, and they tend to treat fleshy travelers from the material plane better than elementals and other outsiders do. Water combat. Water impedes combat on the elemental plane of water, just as it does beneath the surface of a material plane ocean. When creatures are involved in combat, the following rules apply. Creatures without a swim speed or a freedom of movement spell or similar effects suffer a -2 penalty on attacks and damage underwater. Further, any slashing weapon, blunt weapon, claw, or tail attack that also deals half damage. Subtract 2, then divide the remainder by 2, rounding down, with a minimum of 1 point of damage dealt. Excuse me. The freedom of movement spell negates this penalty. Alright, so that is a lot of the kind of rules about it. Hang on a second. Going to make a quick note to our template here. Alright, so I just wanted to add in a section on our template here for creatures and inhabitants of the realm, just to give a brief overview, and we will expand on the notable communities in later sections. Alright. With that noted there... How's everyone in chat doing? How's everyone hanging out? Hopefully everything's good. Alright, we've been good for about an hour, 37 minutes there. Nice. Cool. Cool. Alright. Let's jump right back into everything here. Jump to my larger camera scene here. Alright. Figure this is where we're going to start jumping back and forth between that section more and not. Features of the elemental plane of water. The elemental plane of water holds but one great immediate danger, and that is the fluid nature of the plane itself. Unless a traveler can breathe water or has no need to breathe, any visit to the elemental plane of water must be brief. Those unable to breathe must hold their breath while on the plane and run the risk of drowning, as detailed in The Drowning Rule in Chapter 3 of the Dungeon Master's Guide. Creatures made of fire, such as fire elementals, take 1d10 points of damage each round on the elemental plane of water because it has the water dominant trait. Creatures with the fire subtype are very uncomfortable on the plane. A great difference between the elemental plane of water and other watery domains is a lack of pressure. In material plane oceans and some others, the pressure of water increases with depth. The water pressure can grow strong enough on the material plane to crush the life out of creatures and bend steel. But the pressure on the elemental plane of water is no worse than just a few feet underwater in a material plane ocean, so there are no dire consequences. Long-term survival on the elemental plane of water is fairly easy. Obtaining water is obviously not a problem, though its purity and salinity may pose some difficulties in specific areas. The abundance of sea life in this plane is enough to satisfy any traveler with a taste for fish. A vague dim glow that issues from all sides illuminates the seas of the elemental plane of water. This glow gives everything a blue-green aura, but limits clear vision. Normal vision, including dark vision, is limited to 60 feet. Clouds of silt, algae, and other detritus may limit sight even further. Hotspots and ice pockets. The bulk of the elemental plane of water is within a comfortable temperature range, like oceanic temperatures in warm or temperate coastlines on the material plane. There is no temperature danger to travelers in areas that are within this range. However, in spots, the temperature changes dramatically. Hotspots raise nearby water to the boiling point, dealing 1d10 points of fire damage to those caught too close. The warmest of hotspots may have vortices to the elemental plane of fire, and in these regions, flames may briefly flicker before being inundated by the endless water. Similarly, cold regions drift on the currents, some so cold that they sap life out of those caught within. Unless otherwise protected, creatures take 1d6 points of cold subdual damage per minute within such an area. As the heart of these regions, solid ice may be found, and there wander such cold-loving creatures as ice para-elementals. Hotspots and ice pockets are usually no smaller than 300 feet across, and ones of a mile or more across have been reported. Movement is unaffected within these regions. Such areas are hard to spot visibly, but the temperature changes around their edges are gradual. Creatures usually know of the approach of a hotspot or cold pocket 1d10 minutes before it starts dealing damage. Under normal circumstances, this is sufficient time to swim for more moderate waters. Okay. Currents, whirlpools, and bores. Most of the elemental plane of water swirls with a dizzying tangle of currents, moving the various fixed locations around with slow ease. Settled areas are aware of the course and heading of other settlements, though the distances may be insurmountable and communities lost to each other through the eternal sea. Hang on, I've got a notice over here. What's going on? Alright. Some currents are stronger than others. Strong currents may drag travelers in a particular direction at up to 120 feet per minute. Roll 2d6 times 10 to determine the current's strength in feet per minute. Travelers must be able to move faster than the current to make progress in the opposite direction. Some currents pose a physical danger. Whirlpools are localized areas formed by counterflowing currents that suck everything within 1d10 by 30 feet into a tightening spiral. Those caught within a whirlpool must make a swim check, DC 15, or take 1d6 points of damage from the buffeting current. Make this check every round. Those caught in a whirlpool can escape it with a second successful swim check, DC 15, or automatically after 2d6 rounds. Some 30% of whirlpools have vortices at their bases, and creatures sucked in are ejected on some other plane, either on the material plane, or on another plane that has an area with the water-dominant trait. Make a reflex save, DC 19, for anyone caught in the whirlpool for each round after the 6th, to avoid being sucked into the vortex. The DM determines where the vortex leads. The most dangerous currents are tidal bores, great fluid avalanches that course through the plane, spreading destruction in their wake. Anyone caught in a tidal bore must succeed on a swim check, DC 20, or take 2d10 points of damage. In any event, creatures hit by a tidal bore are dragged miles away by the forces of the wind. Red tides. A dangerous contagion has infected patches of water where red tides occur. Red tides range from a mere 60 feet across to areas large enough to comprise entire seas of pestilence. Those who inhale the deadly water or whose unprotected eyes are exposed to it may fall victim to blinding sickness, as described in Disease in Chapter 3 of the Dungeon Master's Guide. Unlike with most diseases, the initial fortitude save to avoid infection must be made each minute a character remains in a red tide. Excuse me. Weeds and coral. Balls of seaweed and coral float throughout the elemental plane of water, growing in all directions equally and resembling planets of living plant life. These spherical beds are often the lairs of outsiders native to the plane, especially tritons. The waters around weed and coral spheres frequently have excellent fishing grounds, so sometimes marids build outposts nearby. Marid communities. Marids are a fiercely independent race, so the Marid Empire on the elemental plane of water is really a large collection of semi-independent strongholds, all of which swear fealty in varying degrees to the Padishah of the Marid. Often, that degree of fealty is determined by the proximity of the stronghold to the city of 10,000 pearls, or the presence of agents of the Padishah. All Marids claim nobility of some kind, and the plane is filled with shahs, atabegs, and mufti. A typical Marid stronghold is tied to some type of jetsam, usually a bit of solid matter or even a weed bed. Usually 2d10 Marids are found in such a community, with a variety of elemental servants and Jan, as well as mortals who have lost bets, sought favors, and been chosen as favorites, or otherwise wound up enslaved by the relatively benign Marids. They have little use for evil creatures, even those that breathe water, and Marids are frequently at war with the evil denizens of the elemental plane. The Citadel of 10,000 Pearls is the greatest of the Marid communities and the seat of the Coral Throne. From this court emanates the wise rulership of the great Padishah of the Marid, the keeper of the empire, the pearl of the sea, the parent of the waves, the Maharaja of the oceans, the emir of all currents, and so forth. This citadel, set atop a free-floating coral reef, is bedecked with all manner of towers and halls, carved from living shell and ringed with luminous glowing pearls. About 200 Marids make the citadel their home, all of them nobility. Each Marid has a set of personal servants, bringing the non-Marid population of the citadel to about 1,000. The court of the great Padishah is filled with intrigue and espionage, because each Marid has the heartfelt belief that he or she truly deserves to sit atop the Coral Throne. Assassinations are common, as are palace revolutions and exiles. The Marids are individually the most powerful of genies. Their strong wills and high expectations of themselves prevent them from banding permanently under any one leader. Okay. How's everyone doing in chat here? Been going well? Let me do a quick check around, see how you guys are all handling things. Okay, so I've got two more sections here in the features of the elemental planes here, and then it gets into kind of different random encounters that you can encounter on this plane in 3rd edition. I'm kind of thinking of maybe going through those and then calling the stream there. I think that might be a good kind of pausing point, and then we'll jump back in probably either later today or tomorrow, just to see what all we can do there. Pick up a new stream, that sort of thing. But yeah, let's go ahead and just finish off the last two sections here on features of the elemental plane of water. So for one, the City of Glass. For travelers with less of a taste for palace intrigue, the City of Glass is an ideal gathering spot on the elemental plane of water, especially for travelers who breathe air. Located at a stable collection of portals to other planes, stable in that they do not move in relationship to each other, the City of Glass consists of a great sphere, of unbreakable glass, half filled with water. Visitors enter the city through any number of openings along the water side, or through magical portals in the air bubble half. Many buildings cross the boundary between air and water. There are buildings filled with water in the air half, and buildings equally stocked with air beneath the water's surface. By mutual agreement of the city's resident, down is toward the water half of the sphere. The City of Glass is a cosmopolitan collection of traders, travelers, and expatriates from other planes. Its denizens are primarily from the aquatic races of the material plane, including merfolk, aquatic elves, kuatoas, lizardfolk, lokathas, and sahuagin. It is ruled by a council of long-time residents, no two of whom may be of the same race. The City of Glass is a merchant's free port and actively encourages trade. Mercanes may be found within its borders, along with Marids, Dao, and human traders. Several of its portals lead back to the material plane, and it is said that in secret places within the city there are portals to other planes as well. Historians note that the unbreakable glass of the dome has been broken in the past. Without definitive gravity, however, the air remained more or less where it was. The city officials immediately repaired the rift and put to death the visitors whose errant spells were responsible for the break. And then finally, in this section on features is the Avenger. The true nature of the Avenger, a unique figure on the elemental plane of water, is unrevealed. Considered a myth by many, the Avenger appears as a great dark gray manta ray, measuring about 90 feet from nose to the base of its tail, and 180 feet from wingtip to wingtip. Its tail, which extends a further 90 feet, discharges lightning bolts as an 18th level sorcerer, apparently at will. The Avenger appears to be a construct or a vehicle as opposed to a living beast, because it propels itself through the water with a battery of water screws. There are several theories about the Avenger. It might be a powerful construct, either still under the control of its master, wild and berserk, or with its own free will. The stories inevitably vary on this point. Others contend that the Avenger is a vehicle, perhaps constructed on an alternate material plane that found its way to the elemental plane of water. The nature or fate of its crew varies from tailspinner to tailspinner as well. The Lokathas say the crew is Lokatha pirates, while the Marids make a good case for a rebellious Jan. Several human tales talk of a crew of specters. And that's it. That is what we know about the Avenger there. So I think that that's probably going to be where we call this stream, having kind of talked through several of the different criteria, several of the different things that we're looking for, having built a template here that we can apply to all of our different discussions of the elemental plane, having found a couple of interesting bits from the manual of the planes that we can incorporate into our description of Ionok in the Underkeeper setting and of the Shattered Seas. And so I think that that is a fantastic job. Things got done well today. We've been streaming for about 2 hours now, and we'll probably be doing so again over the next coming days. So Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you guys had a fantastic time, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.